So I want to introduce you all to Channing Moreland. Channing is a mother, teacher, author, and activist. Channing grew up with the privilege of seeing positive representation of Black men and women in print and in reality. So her inspiration for writing comes from the value of seeing people that look like you represented in a positive light. She sees and has recognized the lack of positive representation in Black folks in media and literature, and has really committed her work to ensuring that the narrative is reframed for oneself. Her mission, of course, is to help shift world consciousness through the empowerment of our Black youth and providing the guidance that'll assist them in their paths moving forward to find their authentic selves. So thank you for joining us this evening. As usual, if you have questions that come up along the way, please drop them in the chat, but we'll do a brief Q&A once she's finished her presentation. Take it away.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kirsten, for that introduction. So just a little disclaimer, something's going on with my camera on my computer, so I'm on Zoom on my phone, and I'll be looking at my computer for notes, so you may be seeing my eyes go back and forth. I am Channing Moreland, mother, educator, and author. So first, I just want to share a little bit about my educational background, and then we'll go into the marathon mantras. I have a bachelor's in speech therapy, and then I have master's level course completions in school psychology and educational counseling with trauma-informed care and restorative practice. People chuckle because I like to call it a half master's, but I always feel that it's important to add those programs for a reminder to myself to really just put some respect on my own journey. Although I did not complete matriculation through either of the aforementioned master's programs, what I gained from them has shaped my understanding, my politics, and my practices in education. And it's a reminder that every endeavor we take has the power to contribute to who we become. So if I was solely focused on my lack of successful completion of those programs, I wouldn't have the confidence to make the impact that I've made without those degrees. So with that being said, though, I am in the final semester of my master's degree in education program, so I will be finishing that soon. But I'm honestly glad that I took the time that I did, because my journey showed me what it is that I actually wanted to do in education, rather than just getting those degrees for the sake of getting a degree or to please the people around me. So that's my background in education and kind of what moves me through education. We can go to the next slide, please. All right. So this is the marathon mantra. We will discuss the background of the project, my inspiration, my purpose, and then we'll get down to the nitty-gritty. And that, I like to call it that because it was a ton of work, like a ton. And we'll discuss what my process looked like, getting the artwork for my book, just the footwork behind everything that I did. And then I'll share a little bit more of the project that I've worked on through the years. Okay, next, please. All right, how it started. So I like to call this my light bulb moment. It was April 2019, and this was the day after Nipsey Hussle passed. And one of my older brothers had never listened to Nipsey Hussle before. He was not a fan. He just that wasn't in his circumference of awareness. And so he's one of those people who, after the artist dies, they kind of go in and listen and become familiar with the artist. And my brother was so profoundly impacted, and he was just so moved. And I remember he came over and he was like, oh my goodness, like, I can't believe that I've been missing out on this for so long. Like, his words are so amazing. Everything he's saying is just so profound. And so my brother goes, this stuff needs to be in a book. And mind you, I had just completed my first self-published book along with my twin sister. Our book is called B is for Black Girls. So we did B is for Black Girls, self-published it. And I just felt like I was the book writing master. And so my brother said, this should be in a book. And I said, okay, say less. I'm going to put it in a book. And he's like, okay, go ahead, do it. And that was the day I started, actually. I didn't know what my book was going to look like. I didn't know what the direction was. I just knew that I wanted to create something that really captured and highlighted Nipsey Hussle's messages in a way that hadn't been done. And so my first step with that was to listen to all his songs. So you can see I have the picture of my children in the car. And I put that picture because all of our car rides for like over a year with listening to Nipsey Hussle, like that was the soundtrack. I went all the way back to the very beginning of his music. At the time, I wasn't familiar with his older music. I started listening to Nipsey Hussle around the time of his album called The Mailbox Money. And I can't remember the year off the top of my head. That may have been 2014 or so. So I knew that music and anything that came after it. But when I had my book idea, I said I have to go all the way back to the beginning. So that's what I did. And that was my discography review. And I did that with my children in the car every day to the point where they were so familiar with Nipsey Hussle's voice. And I love telling the story about my middle son. His name is Pharaoh. And one day we're riding in the car and he mentions Nipsey Hussle's wife. And I said, his wife? And he's like, yeah. And I said, he doesn't have a wife. And he's like, yes, he does. And I said, well, who's his wife? And my son says, To This Game. And I said, who? And he says, To This Game. And he's like, he said, I'm married to this game. And I laughed so hard because Nipsey Hussle has a song where he said, I'm married to this game. That's who I made my wife. And he's talking about just life and the work that he does and how committed he is to it. But my son interpreted that as his wife's name literally being To This Game. And that's just kind of an example of how much me and my kids were in listening to the music. And it also told me as a mother, like, your kids are really listening. So whatever it is that's coming out of these speakers, they're listening and interpreting. And because of the content of some of Nipsey Hussle's music, or much of it, I made sure to kind of just explain things and talk about things with my children that we were listening to. So that is my how it started. Again, I spent over a year just compiling lyrics and compiling lyrics. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is my gaining focus and clarity moment. You can see I have a photo of myself with the chart from a class that I was teaching, and I like to call it like my divine assignment. I was in Baton Rouge at the time, and I was teaching 7th grade English. And of course, Baton Rouge is all the way in the South. Nipsey Hussle's from Los Angeles, LA. And so my 7th graders were not familiar with Nipsey Hussle. I think I may have had 2 students who knew who he was. No one knew his music, and they were unimpressed. But I decided that we were going to use some of his lyrics for an assignment. And we did what I call a lyrical annotation. So I took a verse or whatever portion from the song, and I printed the lyrics out for my students, and we listened to the song, and then they had to annotate. So they had to define word meanings, they had to interpret the meanings of the lines, and we just went through the whole song. And when I first started, they were, again, unimpressed, and they're 7th graders. So if any of you are teachers are familiar with middle schoolers, like that's the rough age, 7th grade especially. And they were like, But once we started, and I did the first line just to model for the students what it was that they were supposed to do. And then I let them do their own. And then we came back as a class. And once we came back and I saw their interpretations and I was able to listen to how impacted they were and how connected they were to the music or to the lyrics, I knew that part of my book or the direction of my book was going to be to service and to create something for middle school, high school age students. And so that is my clarity moment. And that's when my students literally became my teachers. And that was their contribution to the creation of the marathon mantras. And that's my inspiration. We can go to the next, please. All right, divine guidance, purpose, and spiritual alignment. So this book is so important to me, and it's just, I'm so connected with this book. And when I talk to people about it, it's important for everyone to understand that this wasn't like a get rich quick scheme or like, I wonder if I can make money if I made a book off of. I had the vision, the light bulb moment from my brother, and then the spiritual alignment and connection with the direction that my book took. And along with that was the purpose. And I wanted to create something, again, that was going to be for students, for young people. And I wrote the book especially for my students, and not just one student in particular, but the demographic that I love to serve the most. Those students who are so often given up on and discarded and overlooked. but they need and deserve love and support while they navigate their challenging life circumstances. I know the power of connecting with youth by meeting them where they are and giving relatable game and guidance. And that is exactly what the Marathon Mantras does. That is part of my purpose as an educator in life, as a mother, as a community person. And so that's my alignment. Okay, next slide, please. A labor of love and the nitty gritty. The nitty gritty, because it was nitty and gritty, this was a process. The Marathon Mantras was a process. And when I say labor of love, I hope that it doesn't romanticize the struggle and the challenges, the emotions and exhaustions that I experienced while I was creating this project. And it's really what anyone will experience while they're working on a creative endeavor that is really connected to who they are and is serving a higher purpose. So with that being said, the Marathon Mantras has been a 5-year process and full of just emotional labor. I've never worked so long on one project in my life, and I'm a doer. I have an idea, I have a light bulb, and I just go for it. And I work and work and work until it's completed, whatever it is, whether it's a community service project, whether I'm supporting a family, whatever it is, I have that idea and I go. But it's usually a short run. Nothing has ever taken me this long. When my sister and I did our first book, I think I had the idea maybe in June of, what was that, 2018, the year my daughter was born, June of 2018. And by January of 2019, that book was released. So I go. I had the idea. I never published a book before, but I'm gonna go. The Marathon Mantras, again, took me so long. And it's an emotional process. Being a vessel for something so sacred can be heavy. Throughout this process, a huge part of my focus and intent was to ensure that I was creating something that would honor Nipsey Hussle's legacy in the most pure way, and something that would make his family and his children proud. So with that being said, I'm working on something that is truly coming from my heart, but it is using someone else's art, someone else's life's work. And I just wanted to make sure that I kept it pure. And so while I'm working on the project, there were a number of things that I felt like I had to do. And part of the exhaustion came from roadblocks when I went to accomplish those things that I felt I had to do. I never heard a no. There was never a block that stopped me. And there wasn't really any discouragement. Maybe one person actually did try to discourage me a little bit, but I wasn't listening to what he was talking about. I didn't even know him. And I was like, okay, I'm not, my spirit doesn't have time to entertain that thought. So I never heard any roadblocks, and there was nothing that stopped me, but there were a lot of closed doors. There were a lot of leads that kind of led nowhere. So I would get excited, like, oh, okay, this is gonna, and it didn't, whatever it was. And that became disheartening. And so I thought about a number of times what never finishing would mean. What would it look like for me? How would I feel if I never finished this project? Because so many things happened where I felt like, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to complete this project if I can't find the people that I need to find and check all the boxes that I felt were mandatory to check? I move with integrity in life, period, but it was mandatory with this project to move with the utmost integrity. This wasn't just for me, it wasn't just about me, and it wasn't just from me. And so I wanted to meet his brother, his family. I wanted to get his approvals. There were a lot of things that I wanted to do. And when those things became difficult, I felt like, how am I going to put this book out? However, I knew that quitting would mean that millions of people would not get the benefits of this masterpiece. And it is truly a masterpiece. I'm biased, but it's a masterpiece. And I knew that I had no choice because the work behind this project was so much bigger than just me. But I would take breaks, get consumed with life, with work, started school again, that third master's program that I'm about to finish. I have my children, all of the things. I worked on a number of different projects over these past 5 years. So my sister and I had completed our first book publishing before I started this. And 2019, the year that I started this, that winter, my sister and I completed our second self-published book. 2020, I embarked on an endeavor that I called Black Lives Yoga. And this was in the wake of the George Floyd protests. And I, in my bio, mentioned I'm a community activist, and that's a really important part of me. But at that time, like, I just couldn't be out in the streets. I just couldn't. It was too heavy for me. And so the summer of 2020, I decided to do Black Lives Yoga. And I got the idea from a video I saw, nighttime yoga, protest yoga in DC. So Black Lives Yoga was the first time I did it was downtown San Diego. I pulled together between 75 and 100 people. We had t-shirts that said Black Lives Yoga. The back said arrest the police that murdered Breonna Taylor. And we walked through downtown San Diego, through the nightlife, and we did yoga chants and Black love chants and Black power chants. And ultimately we stopped in the middle of the busy nightlife kind of districts. We sat in the middle of the street and we did 45 minutes of yoga. And that's just an example of one of the many, many things. I just went on a tangent because I was recently looking at the videos and it just moved me so much to see what we did. So I did San Diego, Oakland, New Orleans, a number of different things with that. My sister and I also completed songs for our 2 books. We completed music videos for those 2 books. We wrote and recorded and produced an 8-song nursery rhyme album called B is for Black Nursery Rhymes. We edited and published a 3rd book called B is for Black Wealth. That's for Black children and families, and it's about financial literacy. And we wrote and recorded, published our Kwanzaa EP. So there's 3 or 4 songs on there for the Kwanzaa holiday. And then we did a Lift Every Voice and Sing rendition too. I know that's a lot, but like I said, life was rolling, life was moving, and things went on over these past 5 years while I worked on the marathon mantras. So I did all those things, but I worked on the marathon mantras in between, at the same time, after, a labor of love. We can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so the structure. This is a part that really kind of excites me. Let me look in. I have my book right here, my structure. So as I mentioned before, I had the song compilation. I compiled the document with the songs. Me and my children will be driving and I'm listening to songs, and I would make voice memos, name of the song, and I would say a couple lines to help me remember what it was that I was keeping track of. If I wasn't the driver, I'm making notes, going into my Google Doc. Eventually, I go into my Google Doc to review all the lyrics that I have. And I began to see these themes emerge. And I remember this so clearly because at the time I was working on theme with my 7th graders. And that was something that was really challenging for them to understand, challenging for me to teach. And as I began to look at my Google Doc with my Nipsey Hussle lyrics, themes emerged. And they were themes that were aligned with who I am as a person, with my way of being, with my worldview perspective. And I said, okay, this is what the book is. Again, when I started, I didn't know. I just was taking notes on things that stuck out to me. The things that stuck out to me aligned with who I am. And so I came up with my themes for the book. I have 8 themes, and those are the sections in the book. And my themes are motivation. I'm looking, even though I wrote it. Motivation, the motivation section. I have a mantra section, an affirmation section, meditation section, self-realization, manifestation, self-actualization, and then the blueprint is the final section. And following those, I also have a 5-year plan for the reader to do after they complete all of the rest of the book. So you have this section, and then at the beginning of every section, it explains what that section is about and what it means. So for example, this is the book, the motivation section, this will be that first page. And the motivation section says, motivation is an internal process. Whether we define it as a drive or a need, motivation is a condition inside of us that desires a change, either in the self or the environment. When we tap into this well of energy, motivation endows us with the drive and direction needed to engage with the environment in an adaptive, open-minded, and problem-solving sort of way. And it goes on just to to help the reader understand what the lyrics that they're going to read, what they represent, and how those lyrics can be used. So after you read that motivation page, then you'll go into the actual reflection pages, and you can see that on the slideshow. It says reflection. And so the way that I did the layout for those pages is I would quote the lyrics at the very top. So this one says, I'm a master of my fate. And I can't read the rest because it's small on my screen, but I'm a master of my fate. And then I do an interpretation. And the reason I wanted to do the interpretation is because I felt like it's just so important to make sure that the reader is fully able to capture and understand what it is that Nipsey Hussle is talking about. His lyrics are poetic. A lot of artists, musicians, or a lot of artists, rappers, singers, their music is poetic. And the interpretation kind of depends on the listener, right? It depends on the vibrational frequency that we are coming with. It depends on our perspective and our understanding of life in the world around us. So some people may listen to Nipsey Hussle and they're just going to hear cursing and tough talk, like, oh, he's talking about the streets. And some people may hear it and the only thing they get out of it is really criminalizing his lifestyle and his experiences. So my goal with the interpretations is to make sure that no one misses the gems, especially when it came to younger people, which was my target audience. I wanted to make sure that that seventh grader who can't quite make sense of what he's saying got the message, right? So I do that interpretation. And then after the interpretation, I have a reflection. And the reflection is a question, a statement to guide the reader into internalizing the message, right? How can I take what Nipsey Hussle has said and utilize that and apply that to my life? And that's what that reflection question helps the reader to do. And then at the very bottom of the page, I have the title of the song, the album it came from, and then underneath I have footnotes. Nipsey Hussle had a very impressive lexicon, upper echelon vocabulary. But again, I don't want a seventh grader or a struggling reader or anyone to get hung up on the vocabulary words to where they can't process and digest, because I don't even know what that word means. You know what it means because Channing put the footnotes at the bottom. Now keep going. So that's kind of the general structure. Again, like I said, I have the 5-year plan in the back. After you go through this whole book and really get to reflect on yourself, the things that motivate you, who you are, why you are, how you respond to life, then you get to work on a 5-year plan to help you map out where you want to be over the next few years of your life. Okay, next slide. Okay, so my artwork. As you can see on this slide, the artwork from my book came from murals. So when I first started, didn't know what the book was, exactly who it was for, what it was for, why it was for. And my first thoughts were just illustrations. My children's books have beautiful illustrations, right? But they're children's books. So I knew that wouldn't work for this. My next thought is maybe I can like get a graffiti artist. And then I said to myself, why do I need a graffiti artist when I can just go around Los Angeles or anywhere there's murals and capture the images of those murals? So that's what I did. And that was a process, let me tell you, a process. My first step was to do some internet research. So I go online, I go on Instagram, and I'm just looking up Nipsey Hussle murals in Los Angeles. And I began to find them. And as I would find them, I would DM the person that posted it or DM the artist if I could find the artist's tag. And hopping in folks' DMs is like not my thing. Like cold calling and just talking to random people, not my thing. And I was so uncomfortable, but I did it. And people would respond, and people were really nice for the most part. And I would just say, hey, can you please tell me where this mural is located? Do you remember? And people would send me those addresses. I got lucky and I found a man who had several murals. And when I DM'd him, he was so kind. And I told him that I wanted to go find them. And he helped me via Instagram, via messaging, helped me along the way. And I decided to do like a 3 or 4 day LA tour to capture these murals. And I went up there one day flossing because I had to rent a car. I don't know what's wrong with my car, but I rented a car. The car I needed was not there, but all they had was a Maserati truck. So I took the Maserati truck and I drove up to LA. And when I got there, I get to the Crenshaw district area and I was like, it sure is crowded. What is going on? And I checked my calendar And it happened to be Nipsey Hussle's birthday. So there was this grand celebrations out in the streets. It was beautiful. The energy was beautiful. And it just felt like more divine alignment. Like, girl, you came out here and you didn't even know, and you picked the right time. And I spent 3 or 4 days driving around LA, looking at my Instagram notes and taking pictures of this artwork. And that's what the artwork in the book, that's where it came from. I messaged all the artists asking if I could use their art in my book. Everyone was really kind and they said yes. So hopefully nobody tries to come back for me later. But I have my receipts. And that's it. But the process was exhausting. Again, it was a lot of work. So from that, I created the NipseyHustleMurals.com. And that was actually really exciting to me because I knew I was working on this book. No one else did. So when I made NipseyHustleMurals.com, that was my first opportunity to share a piece of what I was working on with the world. It was just Instagram, a little bit of followers, but everyone loved it. They didn't know what was coming though. The Marathon Mantras was coming. So I loved being able to share the artwork, being able to help other people who were looking for these images, these paintings, not have to go crazy trying to locate things. And so that was me paying forward from the guy who was really kind to me and gave me all these locations. Okay, next slide. All right. So this is my footwork and perseverance. As you see, it says trips on trips on trips on trips. I wish I would have kept track. At one point, I was keeping track for business, for tax reasons, of all the trips that I made, all the gas money I spent getting up there, the rentals and all the things. Constantly going up to LA. If somebody knew somebody or somebody was where I thought I needed to be to meet somebody, I was there. I DM'd everyone you can think of, and I got on my internet, Instagram research, and I would go on Nipsey Hussle's page or sister's page, anybody's page, find somebody that knew somebody that looked like they knew somebody that was a part of that little network. I was in the DMs. Like, hey, excuse me. Most people ignored me, but it's okay. I was doing my due diligence. And again, DMing people makes me uncomfortable, but I did it anyway. Just trying to make that connection. I usually don't tell this part of the story, but I researched Sam, Nipsey Hussle's brother, who's in this picture. I researched his business entity because I was like, I have to find this man. Like, I need to tell him what I'm doing, and I need his approval, or at least to know that he's not going to disapprove and say no, right? So I'm looking for him, and I researched his business entities. So any address that was attached to those entities, I pulled up. Random addresses. He had like a Creole soul food restaurant in LA. Went there, had lunch, asked for him. He wasn't home. He wasn't there, but I went there. I ended up finding their new store location. They have a new Marathon clothing store, and it's on Melrose. And so in my research, I found a Melrose address, and it was attached to this hair store that they used to have that I knew wasn't in operation. So I decided to drive by that address, and the face of the building was blank. No doors, no windows, except at the very top, there was a little window, and I could see a little tiny light up there. And I was like, it's giving construction. They're working on something. A couple months later, I was with my twin sister. We were at Jordan Sparks' house she was working on some new music, and we were like helping writing songs. And the friend that connected us there, he was there, and I was telling him about my book, and I was showing him my book. A guy walks in, a videographer, don't know him from a can of paint, but I'm just talking about the book and the project. And later he begins to ask me a lot of questions like, did you know Nipsey? What's your relationship? Just asking me about the project. It turns out that he actually knew him really well. He grew up under him, and he was one of Nipsey's first videographers. And he actually still has a relationship with his brother. And so he was impressed with the book. He loved it. And he took a copy to take to the brother. I had it copywritten already, so I wasn't worried. But I was still careful, like who I gave the project to, but I knew that I was under divine guidance. So everything was going to be everything. So I gave him the book. He got it to them. Nothing happened. Again, the leads that led nowhere, that was one of them. But he was really kind. And just kind of, it was a little confirmation and affirmation that I was doing the right thing, and that the project would be well received. A few months later, I met someone else, a friend of a friend who knew somebody, and I drove up to LA to give him a copy of the book, and he loved it. And I was explaining what it was about and who it was for, and he was like, wow, this is amazing. I wish someone was recording you. And he took a copy and he gave it to Adam, which is Nipsey Hussle's cousin and his brother's business partner. And he actually called Adam while I was sitting there and he talked to him about it. So that was really cool and really exciting, but another lead that led nowhere. What else did I do? Trying to meet Sam. Oh, I sent letters, mailed letters to that store address that I found. I did for about 6 months. I did a letter or so every month, just mailing him, hi, my name is Shane, and sending him about the project, giving him information, contact information, please call me, please call me, please call me. He never called, but it was okay because I was doing my due diligence. Finally, this is summer of 2022. Nipsey Hussle's sister, her name is Samantha. She has her own like nonprofit organization and they do things for children. So she was having an event and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my kids up there and I'm going to meet her and I'm going to talk to her about my book and I'm going to, all right, did that. I did meet her. I gave her a copy of the sample books that I had at the time and I gave her my other children's books as well. We had a great conversation. And when I gave her the marathon mantras, she looks at it and she's like, huh, this is familiar. Like somebody gave us this. I've heard of this. I've seen this. She couldn't remember who, but that was a big moment for me because I knew that all of that running around and handing things off and DM, all the things that I was doing were working. They actually got the project. It still wasn't a yes, but it was progress. So that was that. And Samantha and we kept in contact for a little bit after that. She took the book with her and said she would look over it. And then she asked me to come to their next event so that she could, so we could discuss the project further. The next event actually got canceled, didn't happen, but it was a good moment for me. And we worked on some other things together. About 2 weeks after that, I finally met Sam. And this was like the big moment for me because that was all the running around, the disheartening that I mentioned earlier. Being disheartened was connected to being unable to reach him. And I met him. I started following his business Instagrams, which I knew he didn't run, but I was like, somebody gonna post something. So they were having an event at the cannabis stores in the Valley in LA or outside of LA. And I told my sister, like, let's go. Like, this might be the day. This is gonna be the day. So me and my sister go up, and that's what the photo are on here. That's me walking down, holding a little bag, walking down in the middle of the event, walking down the street. We are there, we're kind of hanging out, and I finally see Sam come out of the front door of the store. There was a long line that I didn't want to get in, but he came out, and I grabbed my book, and I'm like, let's go. We got to meet him. So we get in line, and we go in the store, and I go up to the counter, and I ask for him. And he came out. I introduced myself, told him my name, told him what I was doing. I showed him the book. Like, I've been sending you letters. I camped out. I forgot that part. Camped out behind your store on Melrose. I left a book back there. I know somebody saw me because somebody came out looking alarmed. And I just told him all the things I was doing. And I could tell by the expression on his face that he knew who I was. He knew what my book was, and he was familiar. And that was a huge moment for me. I gave him another copy of the book with a letter. He said he would get back to me. He didn't, but it was okay because I was doing my due diligence. And that was that. I knew that I did everything that I could to reach that family. I knew that I gave them every opportunity to shut me down. They didn't shut me down. And everybody's like, but did he say yes? He didn't. But what he didn't say was no. And I feel like it's a lot easier to say no than it is to say yes, because once you say yes, then all of this work has to follow behind that. What does this woman need from me? What does my contribution need to be? What is just all of the business in that he's going to have to handle? And so I was like, he's a businessman. He's going to want to see me being a businesswoman and putting this out on my own and getting things moving. And then I'm going to hear from him. And so I decided to go ahead and move forward. I sent him a final letter letting him know of my plans and you know where to reach me when you're ready to, to discuss all of the ins and outs of how we're gonna collaborate. And so that's it. That's my big moment was meeting Sam. That was just so huge for me. But again, that was 2022 in the summer. And so this summer, 2023, I finally decided, like, girl, what are you waiting for? If you don't let this book go, let it out. And so I did my reveal on Instagram for Nipsey Hussle's birthday, and everyone loved it. Here we are. February 22nd, my birthday. I will be releasing my final draft, and I'm really excited. That's it. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is work. All the projects that my sister and I worked on, everything I mentioned, this is our little QR code. You can scan that and it takes you to our link tree. And from there, you can go to our website, beisforblackgirl.com, look at B is for Black Boy, B is for Black Girl. We have a link to B is for Black Wealth. B is for Black Girl is on target.com, so that link is on there. Our YouTube link, we have beautiful music videos. I did all of the styling and all of the things for those. You can find those. You can find our nursery rhyme album, B is for Black Nursery Rhymes on there. You can literally find everything. This wonderful QR code. So tap in and see what we're working with. Okay. That's it. Last slide. Okay. I'm done. Oh, yes. In conclusion, thank you. Your attention and your interests. I hope you enjoyed listening to my process. I told Kirsten, like, girl, I cannot talk for 30 minutes plus, but I did. I can. Thank you guys for listening.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.